there are some individuals that are trying to do the exact same thing as the Labour Party over in the UK. For example, Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who took his time amid the Knicks parade and celebration to go do a little celebratory rally for a friend of his, where he made it very clear that the issue is not whether or not you should be here in the United States. It's that once you get here to the United States, legally, illegally, how much money should we be giving you to stay here?
And when you are at those polls, when you are in that booth, and it's just you and your ballot and that incredible pen from the Board of Elections, it is a sacred moment. It is you alone with democracy. And it is then that every New Yorker answers a question. What the other side wants that question to be is, which of your neighbors are you most willing to sell out? What the other side wants that question to be is, which leaders of today are you willing to delay until tomorrow? They asked that the tenant of 40 years vote against the tenant of 1 year. That the divide is between those.
No. See, the issue is not whether someone has lived in New York for 1 year or has lived in New York for 40 years. Again, it's the very flowery kind of Obama-style language where it's a beautiful prose. The tenant of 40 years versus the tenant of 1 year. No, someone who comes to the United States, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment, from, let's say, Japan, who is here for 1 year, versus a person, let's say, from an inner city culture environment who acts like a lot of individuals who have lived in New York for a long time. Americans' preference as to who is their neighbor just so happens to be the immigrant from Japan. It is about culture. It is about how you carry yourself. It is about how you act. It is about how you behave, how you assimilate. The issue is not whether or not someone is an immigrant, although yes, increasingly, immigrant just means someone who comes from primarily third world places and imbibes and brings with them third world culture that does not and cannot assimilate and is not compatible at all with the United States. But this is his frame. He said, what you really need to do, the reason that the people are getting here and they're acting up is because we're not giving them enough money, because that's the left-wing answer to all of this.
Those who have gone through decades of political transformation and those who have joined our movement as soon as they were of voting age. They ask questions that sustain power for those who have it, under the guise of rewarding those who struggle under it. I do not believe that is the question you must in fact answer in that booth.
By the way, it is. So what he just said is that the right wing of this country runs by saying that those who are poor in the United States and those who live in the inner city will be better off when crime is cracked down on, when violent illegal immigrants are captured and deported. And by the way, the answer to that is yes. Since the Trump administration deployed the National Guard to Washington, D.C., remember, after the National Guard was on the streets, they had all of these interviews. You actually had members of the left-wing media, the podcastosphere on the left especially, who would run away. Don Lemon would go up to people and say, so what do you think about the National Guard being here? And he would expect this sweet little old black lady from downtown to say, I really don't like the National Guard here, and it's terrible, and I'm terrified. But she said, I'll tell you what, I like them National Guardsmen right here. I like them. It's safe. I can go out for a walk. I can go to the grocery store. My grandbabies can come over. I'll never forget that interview. And what did Don Lemon do? He basically said, okay, and then he walked away as quick as he could. Because the truth of the matter is that, yes, when you enforce your nation's laws, that people of all social classes, of all colors, and of all creeds, at least those whose cultures are compatible with the United States, are in fact safe. It is one of the reasons why, for example, since we mentioned Japan, we're going to talk about them again in the next segment, it is why Japan has been so hardline against allowing immigration into their country. Because once you allow individuals in and you start giving them everything, it turns out that they don't wean, they don't assimilate, they don't take upon values. And again, this is the thing that Mamdani doesn't realize, or if he does realize, he's just doing it because, again, this is that Marxist ideology. And very likely so, given who he quotes a little bit after this. But we'll watch his answer to this, because he thinks that the right wing is wrong when they say we should get violent criminals off the streets. Again, Mamdani, who allowed homeless people who would have been shuttered by the police off of the streets. He allowed over 15, 17, 20 homeless people to just die to exposure who were drugged out. Anywho, that's a small aside. Mamdani says, well, the real answer is just give them lots of money. Give me money. Money me. Here you go.
In the city I know, in the city I love, the question is not when did you arrive? The question is, can you afford to stay?
Okay. The question is not when you arrive. The question is, can you afford to stay? The answer to this, for all of American history, all the way back, by the way, to the 1600s, when America was fighting for its life on its own as the colonies, especially Virginia and Maryland, because the English, they were engaged in a civil war at the time. So we were it was, you're on your own territory for the colonies, the few that were here. And the biggest issue of the 1600s in the United States was a massive labor shortage. And so the question of this continent has always been not whether or not you can afford to be here. The question has always been, are you willing to work? Again, it is the reason that Jamestown was saved in Virginia from complete and utter starvation, like the lost Roanoke colony before it. The way that they were saved is because a policy was put down. If you do not work, you do not eat. The Old Testament philosophy. And when that is the procedure here in this country, and obviously taking care of our own poor and sick and the widow and the fatherless who are already here, you don't just import tons of individuals who claim to be the poor and the infirm and the handicapped, who often turn out not to be whatsoever, and you don't allow people just to ride scot-free. That's not charity, that's enabling. The same with students. You see, one of the reasons I'm asked constantly as a former teacher why I actually think that schools are passing students out of schools who can't even pronounce basic 2 or 3 syllable words. And the answer is because it's considered a good thing to just pass someone along, because after all, if you don't just pass them along to the next grade, forget if they have the skills to compete or to survive, to feed themselves. They're worried about social stigma, and that's Mamdani right there. Oh, it's the social stigma. You can't afford to live here. You do not have a right to be in New York City. You don't. And the idea that you are owed things as kind of a culture, very, very different.